Okay, better quality cat. Now, it should be moving, but I'm not sure why it's not. Anyway, I tried long and hard to get, there we go. Okay.
Aww.
Oh, how's that? Okay, fantastic. So, data quality today is on for the data citizens. All right, JG, we did a job of introducing yesterday in terms of the webinar series. Do you want to redo that, or should I just go into essential concept?
Howard, maybe it's just to kind of give context of how we get down to data value driven it's quite important is that we'll be referring to like the data value driven way. And you might remember in this July series, we introduced the data value driven management style because it was really important to recognize there are two assets that you need to evolve and develop at the same time. And one is the data product that we look for and search for and know that we're going to be able to deliver value to the business through the data product, but through the mechanism of actually the process of building a data product should and should be recognized as an asset in its own right. And so it was this really important understanding that developing the fitness and the habits in creating good data products and therefore getting a robust process that allows you to do it on an ongoing basis is really important. And there we looked at the DMBOK materials and asked the question of DMBOK, can you define the sequence? And the DAMA wheel is really valuable and it covers all aspects of data management, but by virtue of it being a wheel, it's like, well, where do I start? And so that's what was really powerful about the July series is that it was, the data value driven management, and it means that you're growing a value data asset and maturing your data, you're maturing your data process quickly and repeatedly. So that was July. Then we went on in August to talk. Then in August we really dug deep in terms of making sure that you never lose sight of the value. And we realized there's multiple stakeholders and each of them have an important part to play in terms of the value proposition that our data product can offer. And I don't know, anybody might remember we played with it, we had a little bit of a time where we swapped the sequence of these 6 elements on the right-hand side. And we asked the question, does it matter? I don't know whether any of you can remember that, but we said, well, what happens if we just all go and find the value without defining the value? And you might remember a call from a gent on one of the calls called Reddy. And he was like, well, what happens if you go to all the effort, you prepare the product, you've got great value, and then the business doesn't recognize its value? And that happens when you get the sequence wrong and you don't invite the stakeholders who have a vested interest to define and own the value taxonomy into the discussion prior to you developing data products that are valuable. So it was this interesting construct where you kind of like, the business is not debating its value. They're just saying, this is great, thanks very much, we'll use this. And you're saying, well, hang on, but we've instituted a valuable process, and the business goes, well, I mean, maybe, but now we've got this, and we move on. So the August was really about going deep in terms of the value taxonomies and in particular aligning the value, vertical and horizontal alignment. Driving the value we find to be a really powerful way in which the DVD way works. So that drive value linked it back. And then bake value is one of these fascinating terms. And Howard, I'll never forget you the very first time you brought this slide up. Shucks, it was probably in March.
Yeah.
And it was just a simple little, one of those little cut and pastes that you'd extracted out of a
CIO feedback. Yeah.
CIO feedback. And it was like, unless you are creating these feedback loops to bake the data elements back into your business process, you're missing an amazing opportunity for data to become ubiquitous to the value cycle. So very cool. Those points were August, and then September is.
And Connie was just saying this was the eye test.
Yeah. Do you see better with 1 or with 2? And then we did a bit of a double click on the DVD way and said, well, if data quality, we proposed, and the premise for the month of September is that data quality is the guide to trustable analytics. And so we introduced the fact that data quality sits at such an interesting junction in the data value chain. And in particular, it is that place before, it's the first step of implementation. And what we're going to present today is we're going to present some real detailed analytics actually in and around the data quality that is informing both the feasibility, so that, remember, the DMMA, the data management maturity assessment that happens really far up in terms of assessing your use cases feasibility. We now realize that data quality is such a powerful feedback loop to validating your use case, but equally, data quality, once you institute it, you never stop. The mechanisms that we're going to watch today, and Howard, I'm hoping that you can take us to that level of detail, is that data quality is not, and it's not a project execution. It's like it's operational execution. It happens all the time, and we're hoping that some of the exhibits that we're going to show you today give you real examples as the value that it brings right from the get-go in terms of initiating the use case, but equally how you would just never let it go because it's so valuable and powerful for you to keep your analytics trusted. So Howard, that's how we got to September. So hoping that you can give us the essential concepts, and then we can have a look at it through the perspective of a data citizen needing to actually kind of go, oh my word, I've got the data. It's the first time I'm seeing a use case coming alive, and the first view of it I get is my data quality. How do I proceed? So thanks, Howard.
I just wanted to share a little bit of experience that we're seeing at the moment whilst we execute this with one of our customers. And it was interesting to see Patrick clapping. I think that was due to the talk that he gave and his fourth V, which was data veracity. Not so, Patrick.
Yep, I'm literally dancing on the floor.
Nice, Patrick.
So there's been some really interesting challenges we're facing with this flow. And the one interesting challenge is that when we first did this DQ, almost a week and a half ago, there was a level of panic that came in. And the panic was, oh my goodness, look at all these problems. And we had all sorts of change challenges that we fell into. And we did it incorrectly. We presented all these DQ issues and said, look, there's problems here, here, and here. And of course, some people didn't like that and felt a little bit awkward in those situations. And some people said, no, that can't be right. And they jumped into the data and they started checking and they said, there are things right. And so we got into the cycle of show, fix, change, and stuff like that. And we've had to now really battle and ensure that we don't spend 5-6 months here, that we actually cut it off and we actually say, okay, we got to a certain level. One of Deming's 14 points of quality, total quality management says, please don't try to fix everything. Please don't aim for zero defect. We can't afford that. We can only say, okay, right, let's deal with the top 80% issues. And I know JG is going to show you this and demonstrate to that, where you find the 20% issues have an 80% impact. But what is important is people do not believe that you're going to fix everything and want to fix everything. You've got to really just give an understanding of where you're at and then allow things to move on. And I was talking to Paul Krobler this morning and going through some of his reference and master data, because from the data quality, we realized that we really need reference data and master data and the type of things that he needs to put in place to achieve the result that we need. And so we can already see the feed that data quality has shown us in terms of differences between systems. How do we ensure that we're getting the right picture, and then how do we give the right steer to reference and master data? Okay, so been some fascinating learning experiences on that. Now, I wanted to take you into the essential concepts, and one of the things about the essential concepts, and we actually do this in our data quality for certification, is we take people through doing an initial assessment with all the challenges, and then we also do a checkup on our maturity assessment in terms of our feasibility, saying, can the organization deal with this at this point in time? So we done a maturity assessment, we done an initial assessment, and then I just want to focus on every single person in the organization who deals with data should know how to manage these basic quality tools. So please, if I can implore you and just encourage you to be able to load up a data set wherever possible, be it in SQL, in Power BI, and I've been trying to convince ST that you can get it very quickly up in front of you in Power BI with a simple approach, and you can start showing people what the state of the data is. Okay, so don't think you're going to spend 3 weeks getting it into SQL and doing stuff. Let's use the tools to get there as quickly as possible and start to show where we're at. So the one situation, the one tool that we need to learn how to use is this cause and effect. So when we start seeing problems, we now need to describe and understand the cause and effect. So the Ishikawa or fishbone diagram helps us enumerate the problems that we're seeing and why we have these problems. Now, interestingly enough, these problems can come from null values in the data set. So, or interesting one, we saw some certain critical CDEs that needed to have a reference data element, and they had 1, 2, and then the Arabic version of closed. Now, that's weird because we just really expected 1, 2, or 3, and we were seeing 1, 2, and Arabic thing for closed. So there's a situation where you can really start seeing some of the problems that you're facing. This check sheet, JG did a great job of when we had duplicates in one of the data sets, we could almost show where the duplicates started, what date we had duplicates, where they started building up and where they peaked, and then when they went down again. So having something like a check sheet is really good to show a histogram view similar to this in terms of where did the problem start, what was the low limit, the low control limit and the upper control limit, so frequency distribution, and we're going to show you some examples of that. This was the Shewhart cycle where he used this from a scientific experiment point of view in terms of saying, where are the outliers and how do I choose the right set of min and max in my DQ business rules to pick up outliers and then to pay attention to those. Just focus on those elements and you don't need to worry about the ones that are performing okay. But what we are trying to achieve is when we look at the data and we define our business rules, where's the min and max and how do we set that min and max? Okay, and it's not as easy as we thought. Now, doing something like this is extremely valuable, where we take all our CDEs and we really just look at per CDE and we look at the counts, we can understand the histogram of the distribution of the data. And also very helpful, we can see peaks and spikes and troughs and all sorts of things by showing the histogram. And then again, when we're looking at the frequency, I think this is very important. We must all understand when we're looking at frequency type data, this is helpful to set the min and maxes. So can you see here, we would think where we don't want to, what I used the term in my DQ course, we don't want to be crying wolf with our DQ business rules to say, we got a problem, and it's actually a normal business issue, but it's an outlier, it's an extreme effect. We have to be able to isolate and create the range that we're allowing numbers to come through. Okay, so you can see these different distributions, skewing left, skewing right, bimodal, multimodal, and symmetric view of the data that we're looking at. And here's an example of the type of CDEs that we looked at. So can you see, for example, we have like contract end dates. most of them sitting towards the end, contract start dates, and you can already see, oh shucks, if we're going to be doing forecasting forward in terms of what do we think we can do, we don't have too many years of start dates to do some interesting forecasting. So if people are looking for economic activity over time, we've really only got a bunch of data sitting at the end of 2020, 21, 22. We don't have several years of this, and we must look at what's going on. Okay, then we look at row counts by industrial city, by different status, and we're picking up a good understanding of what's happening. Plus, we're picking up duplicates. We picked up a whole lot of duplicates that you can see. So within minutes, ST, I know, maybe how long did it take you to, from the beginning when we showed you getting the profile out and getting the histograms, sort of how long did it take you to build that Power BI and understanding that this was brand new?
Probably less than 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
Oh, well, actually significantly less, like with your help, like even shorter. So there's a difference with like that help versus figuring out how to do it as well. And like just going through like what your process is how you approach this is invaluable, pretty much. I can concede it's very faster with Power BI than something that I could have come up with at this point. So I can see how this is useful, especially for quick feedback. Like we need to give quick feedback.
And I think this is so important when you get a data set. And I promise you, we're getting data sets like once every day. We're getting a new data set, and we have to bring it up and show the people, there's still a problem here, and things like that. So it's about getting through and getting this visualization as quickly as possible. And when things start to stabilize, then we get into more complex analysis. But that's the important part. Okay. Then we've spoken about the Pareto principle. I think this is very interesting. We must realize that we're not going for zero defect, guys. Zero defect is your enemy, and we really need to find a way of cutting it off to say, okay, we've got enough quality now. Let's progress, because we'll always find issues, we'll always find problems, but let's get through to the advanced analytics so that we can start getting some feedback and getting the products up and running. So what this Pareto is saying is, from a quality point of view, 20% of the issues will give us an 80% benefit. Okay, so if we can fix 20%, we'll achieve that a lot faster. Okay, so how do we make sure? Then there's a scatter plot in terms of looking at two features and looking at the relationship between the two features. We're looking at drawing the line in terms of understanding how these two quantitative variables interact with each other. So when one is increasing, the other one is decreasing. We need to understand that layout. And here's an example that I did with a play axis. And I was looking at first rentals and contracts. And we can see within a specific period of time where in third Jetta in the one country, we were really high on our first year contract levels. Okay, so helpful to understand which ones are above, which ones are below. Do we go and look at the Oasis and say, why are you so far out in comparison to the others? But I'm just hoping you can see now that it's tremendous value in terms of helping us set the data quality rules. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to assess the data so we can set the quality rules. So when it comes into operational mode and the data is flowing on a daily basis, as JG was saying, we can pick up the problems really easy. The other approach is a flowchart. Why isn't this data there? What's wrong with it? We're seeing with this industry sector, it doesn't line up, and how do we do that? And we can go back to the business. Another approach is getting sampling right. We have to be a lot more careful about how we choose the sample data, both for testing and for analyzing. How do we get it right? How do we choose the right sets of contracts, the right set to do our analysis on, because we may not be able to analyze everything. Now, what I've shared with a few of the people that I teach is there are not all the DQ rules are the same. We get our relatively explicit and simple DQ rules like consistency, completeness, and things like that. And we've got fixed rules, and we can almost say, if you're not meeting these levels, stop the report. And we showed that last week. But then there are these ones called reasonableness, where, for example, we don't have the rental prices at this point in time, and now we need to explain and provide an impact analysis. What are the missing impact? What are the missing rental prices doing to us? Those that are zero and those that are null. And it was great. Esty got feedback this morning to say they should not be null and they should not be zero. And so that led us to say, well, if we get this right, what would the financial impact be? And again, remember, it's all about showing quality, business value. So if we can demonstrate that we can earn another 55 million by addressing these prices, that's of big value to the business. They want to see that type of thing, and I'm hoping JG will show you a lot more there. And we use things like the box plot to achieve that breakdown and understanding. Okay, so within an hour, within 2 hours, within 3 hours, you've got a tremendous amount of feedback to give back to the business to show them what the state of the data is. And of course, what we're trying to do here is the initial assessment, making sure we know that we can deal with a certain amount of issues, we can fix them, and that may be dealing with reference data and master data, data security, or data sharing, and data modeling. We can actually address these issues. Okay, but we need this DQ understanding before we start making decisions about what do we do, how do we fix it, how do we go on. So I'm hoping that gave you an explanation of what's important as a data, and now we're actually talking about data citizens that can analyze it. You don't need to be, you don't need to be a data quality professional to be able to give this insight. And I'm sure JG can share testimony to this, is the more time he spent on finding anomalies is helping him when he finally gets to the advanced analytics, is helping him to be able to present the data appropriately. JG, I think I've spent enough time, maybe too much.
Not at all, Howard. Thank you. That's a cool segue for me to pick up on. And so let's just, we are going to go to some detail. And I'm hoping that I can, what I'm asking is, please don't get spooked by the fact that there's going to be a bit of detail on these slides, is as one spends more and more time just looking for where the data quality issues are, Howard, I can't agree more with you. I build a stronger and stronger confidence in which of those dimensions I'm going to lean on for some of the advanced analytics. And when we say advanced analytics, I'm not, the descriptive analytics are going to be a vital part of the delivery to this client, because there's levels of sophistication that we need to get to. And we're going to start there. We're going to start off with some really nice, simple and illustrative descriptive analytics using quite a few just, simple bar charts, but they're very revealing. So I'm finding that through the DQ process, I'm getting empowered for preparing the analytics. And what does that mean in the DVD way? It means that you must include the parties who are going to do your analytics, include them early, and definitely include them within the DQ phase. So Howard, if you can just double click on Data Citizen, I think that should take us to the deck.
Great.
Okay, you might just need to, if you could just take me to the Data Citizen slide in the deck, and then I'll just...
So I'll just check the number. Apologies for that. Something. Is this the wrong deck, JG? Is there another one that you... I see one slide there. Do you want to show yours?
Yeah, I'll do that.
I thought I saw JG working on this.
Fine. I'll just I'll take over from here.
Okay.
Cool. So we're going to just take a really thin sliver, and I must just highlight at this point the power of using a very focused scope of CDEs. So remember, a CDE is a critical data element. It's those elements that you're going to be doing the quality scoring on. And as I've been going through the process, I've realized how powerful it is to not be concerned that you don't have many CDEs, because getting the CDEs that you have right is in itself quite a task. And so we only have 6 CDEs, and you'll see that we'll be using 3 of them in these analyses. And already it's sent the business, it's given the business so many opportunities to go and fix and improve and make some changes. So today, for the next 10-15 minutes, we're going to be looking at the DQ, and we're going to work our way towards the commercial impact assessment of the error. And so we're going to give a number. We're going to give a value amount to the cost of having this data quality issue. And in particular, the data quality issue that we're looking at is the annual price rental when it is 0, and what that actually does to the data. So we're going to be using this technique a couple of times. I'm going to introduce it now and highlight that how we go about using this to get to the commercial impact assessment. Here we have a histogram, and this histogram is a really cool feature by MAQ because it also includes your null values. So can you see the null values? In a histogram, the bars give you the frequency, and your distribution along the x-axis is the bucketing of the amounts. So what this is showing us is there's quite a few contracts with that have got a zero amount rental associated to them. In fact, when we ask exactly how many contracts, and we have a look at across different regions which contracts, we find that they're close to 500 of a total set of around about 1,200. So a significant number are coming through as blanks, and so we're going to quantify that, and this is where the opportunity comes into Pareto this list. So the first thing we do is we know we got a problem of 500. If we then just even the first 3 elements are suitable for our Pareto to just do an analysis. And what you're going to see is I'm going to walk through the first, the second, and the third, just having a look at how they contribute towards the data quality assessment. Here we are looking for. Remember, we're starting to see data quality and reasonability. Reasonable testing. Reasonableness. Thanks, Howard. What this graph is showing is it's saying money versus land area. So to all intents and purposes, this is a real estate client, and therefore you expect that the larger the rand area, the more the money. And this trend is not exactly what we're seeing come through in the data. And we are realizing that our DQ issue is affecting this particular trend that we're expecting to see, money versus area. And so we're going to go zoom into this, and as we go through. So the very first one that we're going to look at is 260 of these were blank. Almost half were blank. And the challenge here is this data should be cleaner than what it is. There's a discussion. And what we see here is we start pulling out the mean. So the mean value for this particular geographical location is sitting at about 91,000 reals per year. So that's going to be the amount that we now add or assign to the blanks. And so for these, we're going to pick up that amount, we're going to assign the mean to the blanks, and we're going to start to figure out what our commercial effect of this data gap is. So pretty cool. This has got a relatively, and Howard, you referred to your different types of distribution. So this has got a right skewed distribution, and therefore, as soon as a distribution is not symmetrical, you need to be really wary of using the constructs of averages, and you need to be really making sure you're aligning yourself to means and those kind of constructs. And what I then do is I come across from a histogram, and a histogram gives me a really nice perspective of how the rental is distributed. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give me a sense in terms of how all the data points are taken into account. And that's when I come across to a box and whisker plot. And maybe I'll take a moment just to explain a box and whisker to anybody who feels they know what they are, but just, why would we be using them in this context? So what a box and whisker does for us in this context is it tells us and gives us an idea of the distribution of the rental price for a particular city. So as soon as the kind of behavior that we're looking for is pretty much this one that I'm highlighting now. Let me just switch on a laser pointer. So this is a relatively typical distribution. And for a box and whisker, what one's looking at is the items that are highlighted in the bar. It's known as your interquartile range, and that gives you a very high percentage of your data points sit within your interquartile range, 60–70% of them. And then you get these little things called whiskers, where you now have the remaining 13% on this side, 13% on the other side, which makes up your 95% distribution. And then you get these dots, which typically one can consider as outliers. And you'll see through this analysis, it becomes really interesting, as there are a lot of outliers, which is telling us that there are some pricing processes where it's not null, but it's an interesting mechanism that seems to be used for the pricing. So we then have a look at this one in particular, and we now see that the interquartile range is like 130,
128.
128, thank you. 128,000 is the interquartile range. And so the confidence that we have with our mean is, the number could be on, 70,000 on either side. So this is quite an important level of quantification, because we're about to take a number, multiply it by the number of blanks, and intimate that that's the value that's missing. And you'll see that we come at this problem from multiple directions. And so we do this for the first one. We then do this for...
Sorry, JG.
Yeah.
Now, just if you want to go one back, I'd just like to share two comments. Remember, we spoke about the simple data quality rules and then the complex data quality rules. Now, the hardest thing about reasonableness is to find that min-max that will give us this, where the box plot is showing, that will make us aware of the outliers that are outside of the min-max and allow business to go and investigate them. We're not saying that it's wrong. We're just saying that we feel that it's a little bit funny. So there's a nice that row has got the two dots there, and we'd be saying to business, please go and investigate, because we feel that it's not there. But the hardest thing is ST can attribute to is, well, what are the min and maxes? What is that range? Now, as this one's pointing out as well, is the case of there's such a diversity here that we're going to have to come down to more detailed analysis of finding the min max that we can put down as a data quality rule, that when we present it to the business, they don't say, shucks, it keeps on telling me this, and I keep telling them that it's okay. And then they start to ignore the warnings that we are creating. So I'm hoping that people see.
Such a powerful point you raised there, Howard. And so you will see that I pivoted 3 times before I got to an answer that I felt comfortable with. And so how I think the way you described it was, you need to drill down and drill down and drill down until you start to get to the element that you're comfortable with. Now, my discomfort comes when I have a look at a distribution like this, I just know that there are factors that I'm not taking into account to look for normality or at least reasonableness in a range. And so it means that I'm too high up in the analysis because all I'm looking at is money and location. Now, well, what is it? Money, location, type of work, type of function. We're now needing to start to come down. And so, Howard, that's a great point that you raised. There's to anybody looking at a DQ perspective of a box and whisker across geography, there's just too much variability here. And you'll see that that variability continues. Again, highly variable, some very tightly grouped. So when you get a tightly grouped box chart, box plot, for example, like this, you can think of this as being a really spiked histogram. Your average is very close to, a symmetrical distribution, and your outliers are incredibly close to your whiskers. You've got a very tight distribution, versus this thing over here where it couldn't be further from being tight. And so the one location that we're looking at here is, when your mean is close to your median and it's your whiskers are on either side, you've got a pretty much a symmetrical layout, but still you've got a massive range. You've got a range anywhere between 25,000 and 120,000. Do you see what I did there? I just went to the quartiles and I went, well, what's that? That's 25,000 versus 120,000. It gives me a 100,000 range of my quartiles. Now, remember the job I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to, with a level of accuracy, take into account the amount of money that is not being represented as a result of that rental being zero. So
if I could just ask the people, and I know that when I train data quality dimensions, lots of people are happy with consistency, completeness, but reasonableness, I can guarantee that when I ask, can anyone give me an example about reasonable? Most of my classes, the people are not sure what it means and how to describe it and how to use it. So it's what we're seeing is a really powerful way of data quality adding value to business. And it would be interesting, any of those on there that could add to the chat, if they've made use of reasonableness, can they see how it can help them, or if there's any view that they have. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. So let's so I go through this process for all 4 of the Pareto. So what's quite important here is I didn't do it for all of them. I just literally Paretoed the top 4. And when you Pareto the top 4, it's already taking into account 87% of my total revenue. So Howard, I've just focused on the top 20, and they're going to give me an 80% kick through of the amount of money that I need to have a look at. So the top 4, I'm going to call them culprits, but the top 4 are pretty much giving us an indication as to what the of what the impact is of us getting of these zeros. And so what I did, because there was such high variability, I went to another system to try and validate it. You can think of it almost like the finance system. And there I got another answer. So when I came through you can think of it as the ops system. It got, the mean was 91, 70, 61, and 28,000 reals. When I multiply that by the number of cities who are blank, you get an annual price, and that comes to a number. Equally, if I did it through another mechanism, through almost the finance, not quite the finance system, but just another view on the same data, that number came through to be, almost half the error. Now, this was what Howard was saying, is through the DQ process, you cannot afford to be inflammatory. There are enough people concerned that they have not looked at potentially the quality of the data, they've not seen it, they didn't know how to look at it. It's so important not to be inflammatory at this point. You need to be, the attitude of the conversation cannot be one of blame. It must be one of curiosity. How can it be? What does this look like? How did this happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again, etc.? And so this impact assessment is showing that there's around about, I'm going to just call it 25 million, because these two approaches are bookends. So the answer is probably somewhere in between there. We've got a 25 million real spread that we need to include on our current totals. So it means that whoever's looking at the data from a financial perspective know that it is understated by 25 million reals, and that is an integral part of the decisions that you can ask the data to make. Is it doesn't stop you from winding ahead in terms of the analytics that you're going to do, but you've got to be supported by your DQ process. And remember when I started, Howard, you gave me that chance just to intro. I said your DQ process becomes a operational mechanism that runs probably more often than you do refresh your data. Is DQ never stops running. And so that's, I think, has been such an exciting process, is how relevant DQ remains operationally as you move your data through. So even with this spread, it was necessary to go down another level. And I mentioned that, and now we're doing one more double click to say, shucks, we've got this high variability. We've taken it from two different systems. We've still got variability. What is actually happening here? And we realized we probably need to change the
metric,
the measure. And so I'm just going to wind forward to this particular graph here, which says we used to use rental. That's the money that was given to us by the system, etc. But what happens if we were to derive it from the actual land area, and sometimes we're given what the cost per square meter is? And so interestingly, as soon as we changed the DQ approach, now what we've done here is we've pivoted from our CDE. Our CDE used to be annual rental price, and we saw high level of variability, and there are lots of things to fix. But from a DQ perspective and from a reasonability perspective, we actually needed some more clues and tools. And what we did here was we said, well, fine, we know the land area, and we need to figure out how accurate our square meterage is. But can you see immediately we're starting to see much, we should have a higher level of confidence in our box plots, because our box plots are starting to take a much more realistic shape of what a distribution should look like when one has got control of the inputs. And so what we're looking at here is by product. This is looking really good. This is looking good. This one is a bit collapsed. I'll show you just now as we expand it out, it looks good. This one is, oh shucks, what's happening here? So remember the tip that I gave on a box plot is most of your information should live within your interquartile range. And here what we're seeing is most of the information, a lot of the fields are outliers. So remember the interquartile range, a lot of the data, 60-70% of your data sits in your interquartile range, and then you get these outliers. Now all this is actually indicating is that, and it turns out to be the blank product. Now this gives us some clues and some questions to go back to business, is that the product hasn't been captured here, it's blank. And we think that there could well be a situation where the business is not sure it is not one of these products. It is not behaving consistently relative to these products, and they therefore give it a name blank, because it's not so much a data quality issue, it's a segmentation inefficiency, or not inefficiency, inadequacy of the segmentation. And we don't know the answer yet, but can you see how this plotting gives us clues as to the kind of questions to ask with business? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to zoom into these 4 items and just maybe, Howard, 2 or 3 minutes left. Let me just, all I've done is I've zoomed in and scaled it so that you can see the distribution. So product type 1, it's got the right distribution. The mean is where we expect it to be. Similarly, well, let's carry on here. Even better, we've got the mean sitting right next to the median, and we've got our whiskers really tight up against our interquartile range, very tightly kind of packaged, showing us we've got a high level of symmetry in this particular product. And again, for this particular one, we see there's a higher spread happening here. But immediately from a data quality perspective, this is a more representative metric than the one that we're currently using. And now, Howard, it would be interesting, because we asked the client for the one CDE, but now we're finding that we can get a high level of precision, a high level of confidence, a high level of accuracy if we actually derive the number, because these two items are giving us the spread that we need. And
but
so,
JG, one of the things I show the guys to do in the data quality thing is to say, okay, we found a problem with the original value. Let's find another way of cleaning that value. And so we would, for example, in this case, we would create a DQ annual rental price, and then look at taking the means that you've got here and using some level of analytics or calculations to be able to then recalculate what the annual rental price should be, and then we can be doing the differences and showing them that yes, it was 0 or no, but our belief, our understanding using this is what we believe is the correct value that you should have. Now go and talk to your customers and make some adjustments. And then, of course, first of all, talk to the business before they talk to the customers. We can't be confident on that. So we would then use this as a second iteration to recalculate what we suggest the rental price should be, and we call it DQ underscore annual rental price, and then allow the business to analyze and understand what they have.
I'm with you, and Howard, I think that's how you break the tension of fixing and partnering.
Yeah.
Because and when I say fixing, is the DQ mechanism is illustrating that something is not working as it should. And maybe this is a great example, just to bring this bottom left-hand this bottom left-hand one in, is the high level of variability that we've seen comes as a result of this particular product. This particular product does not play in accordance with the rules of the other products.
Yeah.
But when you start off this process, and you might remember some of these things, there was these ones of high variability. It's because they are straddling two products that are like oil and water. You actually need to look at them separately and individually, and that's what we see happening here. And so this product is it's more of it's called investment, and it is exactly that. And so you're going, oh, how does that work? And it's an investment into real estate. It's not the sweating or the leveraging of the real estate. It's like a completely different product. And so it becomes really important. Look at this, these ones are sitting, your interquartile range here, it's about 80. Here it's 40. Here it's 500. Here it's 7. So you've got your interquartile range, when it starts to concertina like that, you really have to be vigilant that you're not comparing apples and pears and so on. And I think that this view alone has given me a level of confidence as to how I would differentiate, or at least separate out, some of the analytics that we're going to be presenting. For sure, this bottom left-hand corner is going to get it's going to have its own pack of analytics. We're not going to use these mechanisms. We're going to separate them out, is all I'm saying. And so maybe then just in closing, I want to highlight where our next problem lies, and that is this bottom right-hand view gives us a sense of the mean cost per square meter. Now, if one then looks at that number, and we now take a different view, another double click, we click even further down, we start to see the following. Is we're now in an industrial sector leveling. So we're now down at an industrial sector, and we're starting to see that our median is up to 80 on one of the industrial sectors. Now, the reason why this is so significant is we've been absolutely encouraged, blown away, excited by the prospect of open data by default. So as soon as you choose open data by default, it means that you need to offer your data through the lens of standards that are open. And this is an open data standard. It's the ISIC, it's the International Classification of
Industry Sector International Classification.
Industry Sector International Classification. Thanks, Howard. So this is such an important dimension to open up options for open data. But when you do that, your median completely, it jumps by sometimes an order of magnitude relative to your peers, which is sitting over here. And so this is our next level of distilling that we need to go through, because it's not good enough to stop at this point. We need to go all the way through so that our data quality, it actually lines up with our aspirations of being open data by default. And so I share that with you as, you know, the DQ journey is just seemingly just starting and looks like it's already adding value. But if your aspiration is to be to publish some of your data sets in a way that others can consume, or you get that kind of multiplier effect or catalytic effect that you get from the likes of open data or data sharing, or at least you partnering with another person, I guess I'm encouraging you to, your DQ has to punch all the way through so that it is validating those dimensions that you join on. And so, Howard, I think I'm gonna stop there. Anybody who's tired of box and whisker plots are probably very tired of them now. But can you see that as a data citizen, so important to empower yourself with simple techniques of analyzing the data that comes through, being able to visualize it in such a way that raises the right kind of questions with business, and the business can go back and look and see where some of the issues are. We may still have extract issues. That's okay, but we've engaged with business in a non-adversarial, we're curious as to how and why the data can look like it does. We all aligned to wanting to make the data, the decisions that matter, they must be made fast and well. And so, we never lose sight of that as we're bringing these prickly topics of data quality wrangling to the table. And so data quality has still got a good couple of weeks to go in this project before we operationalize it, because it really is delivering great insights to the business.
Thanks, JG. I think it's, I can just see how this can even guide us when we publish to open data. We may choose not to publish those areas that have that untrusted level. And so one can almost flag what's appropriate and what's not. And we have to get something out, and we can't spend too much time, but it's just giving us that view of what seems right and what seems wrong. And then that will allow the business to go and delve into that a lot further. So I think that's great. I think it's fantastic. We now have so much information here that we can also provide to the reference data and master data people, especially your comparison between system A and system B. JG, that's something that master data is critical on, is where do they get their core data? Which one is of better quality before they bring these on, especially if we have multiple systems. So, okay, so we have VJ's got a question. Where exactly the data quality component will fit in the data lifecycle? Does the DQ happen anywhere in the lifecycle? And so maybe just to go back, JG, to your way and just show VJ where we believe it should be fitting in. Okay, so that's a perfect example. VJ, I wonder if that helps you. Once we've done the strategy, once we've brought in the use cases and we've looked at the governance in terms of making sure that we've got this by design, can you see DQ starts the implementation? And it will help us decide to remediate the data set that's going to become a data asset that's going to be producing the data product. DQ tells us, right, now to get this sorted out, our suggestions would be reference data and master data to fix this issue, data modeling to fix this issue, data sharing and integration to fix that issue. And once we've done that, we have a data set that's been almost curated, as we call it. And from there, we can add that data set to the catalog, creating a data asset. So Vijay does that. And then you'll see that BI, once we've got it in the asset catalog, BIA can use it from the asset catalog. So that's the sequence that we're recommending that you apply to the process and where DQ fits in. Okay.
And
So
Vijay,
yes.
maybe one more thing on that is, if you have the luxury of being guided by a data management office or an enterprise information management setup, the confidence that one can have when using data elements that have been cataloged, you can almost confidently pull those through, except sometimes the business needs to leverage data elements that are not yet in the catalog, but are potentially sitting in a data lake that or in a non-curated source. And what's powerful there is, as the data management office or the enterprise information management team, you can highlight which of those data elements you can verify because they're in the data catalog and which ones you can't. And so what it does is it breaks the deadlock that, of course, you can wrangle the data from another source. It's just that you won't verify its authenticity within your BI product. It can still be used and it can still drive some behaviors, but it's important that when something comes from the catalog into your BIA report, it gets, it's been scored, it's been curated, and it's got a higher level of trust than if something is coming from another data source. And that just empowers your data team to promote usage, but encourage good governance. And so you get usage and governance happening together. You don't preclude anybody from doing it. You just highlight which of those that are you are vouching for the integrity of.
Yeah, JG, we got a really nice question from Connie, and I think we may have made some mistakes in our expression. And the question is, if I understood correctly, you seem to have changed your CDE after you noticed the DQ issues. With that in mind, how does this impact the core business concepts, or JJ, I may have shared with you how Remco used a statement of economic growth by economic activity by industry city, by industry sector, by rental price, and our rental price was our economic activity. Now, Connie, I think we may have expressed it differently. What we've realized is that because our annual rental price is not as clean as it should be, can we find a way of calculating what that rental price should be, and then having it is still the CDE. Economic activity is not going to change. Price per square meter is not, it doesn't we don't change what we're going to display to the users by showing them price per square meter. But what we do is we use a different way of calculating and understanding the difference between what the rental price is and what we believe it should be. And it's just giving more clarity on what that CD is. So it's almost like annual rental price can be a calculated field or a recommended field. And how would we go about that? So we would still have economic activity looking at annual rental price, but at this stage, our rental price is a bit dodgy. JG, would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, Connie, I hope I didn't. I can remember myself saying is we had doubt in our CDE. We had having doubt, and it doesn't mean that you can get rid of it. Having doubt means that you've got to bootstrap it. You've got to really look after it. And
Reasonableness check it.
reasonable chicken. And all we've done is found another way to come at the same number, so that when we have a high delta, it lowers our trust in that particular record. Or what it does is it highlights the operational team to go and check that one first. So kind of what we've done is we've immediately created a prioritization process for the operational folk to go and clean individual transactions that are having the greatest effect on our CDE. So the CDE stands. All that we had to do is bootstrap ourselves and it better, look after it better, because it's not as clean as we would need. Hope that makes sense, Connie.
And I think the important thing is that we start to see the big fluctuations on rental price, and having a ratio like price per square meter is a more reliable way of assessing how reliable the actual annual rental price is, and we may make a recommendation that there's something to be checked out, especially when our rental price is 0 or null. We're almost recommending that using this mean box plot, we can now recalculate what we recommend it to be and allow the business to choose between min, max, and average. This is the appropriate rental price that you should be looking at. But what a great value. I mean, anywhere between that 38 million and that 20-something million. I mean, if we can just pick up somewhere in between, it's fantastic value back to the business. I can see a few people typing. Are there any more questions? Okay, VJ says, do we define CDs more from fact tables or dimension tables? So VJ, the thing that, and Connie made a great point, and I'd really advise you to go and look at the Remco video. I'm not sure, Debbie, when you're publishing it, but what he did was, I really liked, we had a statement. He had a statement, he had a sentence about what we were trying to look at, and he extracted the core business concepts. And he said, these are the critical elements, and I really like this approach of looking at the core business elements. Now, it doesn't have to be a fact table or a dimension table. We will see it when we use descriptive analytics that it tends to turn out that way, because our use case was economic activity by industrial city, by industry sector, by partner, by whatever they are. I'm hoping you can see that already that terminology we're using is fact and dimension table terminology. It doesn't have to be that it just comes from fact tables and dimension tables. That's just our use case that we are using. Any feedback from you, JG?
No, how other than I think that I've really underestimated the power of that DQ step. I actually saw it as a project step. So in the DVD way, as we were coming up towards it, I went, oh, okay, we need to do DQ now. I never anticipated DQ having such a pervasive effect all the way through to BIA.
Yeah.
Because what DQ does is it says you go and be aspirational with your analytics. I will give you the air cover. I will tell you when you can publish, but don't stop. Don't think that you have to sort out your DQ first before you can get that aspirational view where you're getting the businesses buy into the analytics that are possible. Because all you're doing is, this is what's going to be possible when this quality score reaches an acceptable level. And what I mean by acceptable level, well, it depends who your audience is. So if your audience is outside your firewall, it might be a more demanding quality level. If your audience is inside your firewall, broadly across business units, would be that much. If your audience is within a business unit and you've got that trust, you can have an even lower quality score. And so DQ jumped all the way to BIA, but equally DQ, and how this is something that we've been debating, is like, what needs to be true to have a view of your DQ even back at DMMA?
Yeah.
Because if you wind your vantage of your DQ process, or at least if you're doing this often in the same business, I think you'll quickly generate a view of your critical data elements, and you'll use it in your DMMA.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you can immediately hold such a high level of cadence or confidence in your cadence that you can deliver at, because you've seen that DQ element, you've curated it, it's been assured, it's sitting in the data catalog, and then you can start coming at it with use case after use case after use case. We haven't seen that yet, but that's where I think the power for me lies, or the excitement lies, is wow, your acceleration through this DVD way. If you pay attention to the steps, every time you iterate, your speed accelerates hugely.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to share with Paul Bolton, who does a lot of maturity assessments. These are the type of things that we would like to enhance that maturity assessment to tell us, with these core business concepts, or we refer to them as data elements. Remco referred to them as core business concepts. But if we can see evidence that these data elements have been gone, they are in data assets, and they've been verified and remediated, the technical feasibility is so much higher than if they're not there and they haven't been assessed. So very helpful that the DMMA goes a little bit lower to say, okay, yes, if you're doing an initial assessment, what of the data estate have you assessed and have you cleaned, and do you understand what the challenges are? What's your level? And in doing that, we get a better technical feasibility, so people can choose the use cases in a more appropriate fashion. And we get more confidence that we can actually deliver this thing in the time period that we're talking about. Paul, does that make sense?
Thanks, Howard. Yeah, I think so. So just replaying it. So basically, in your, when you're facilitating, preparing and facilitating, or you're scoping, even, you're intentional about use case in mind.
Yes. Yes.
For every question, to keep it simple.
Yeah, so remember that one leg is to say we've done an ideation, we've got the use case, now we go into value, commercial feasibility, and technical feasibility. At that level, the DMMA should be saying, guys, show me evidence that you have a data asset for these core business concepts or data elements. If you don't have a curated data asset, this thing is going to drop in terms of its technical feasibility.
Yeah.
And we need that early warning sign. And what you really worry about is when you get to DQ and then you find all the holes. And now we've got to go back and back and fix and back and back and fix. So as the technical feasibility is going to jump each time you get these new core business concepts or data elements into the data asset catalog.
So all of a sudden you've got to jump your approach to the DMMA needs to be, the sensitivity levels just risen.
Yeah. The evidence. Now you see that you're demanding better evidence for this use case. I need more evidence, not down at, has the procedure run, but show me a deliverable that has produced an initial assessment for these data elements.
Sure. That's awesome.
And that's how you protect us, and how you protect the DQ guys, and how you protect that 10-week run from not going into all sorts of investigations.
The 10-week run in mind, you have to do it that way, actually. Sure.
Yeah.
Because you could be scoring something that's outside of that estate, that use case data estate.
Yeah.
And everything seems okay, then you're running as you say, and you just fall flat because it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, Howard. Thanks.
Maybe just the closing thought for myself is, I initially thought that this use case was so simple and so elementary and so not worthy of pursuing. But yet it has been such a gold mine of flushing the real issues. And you know, when your business owners nod when you're bringing DQ items to the table, they know, everybody knows where the issues are. And so I want to encourage those folk is your use case, it starts off simple, but it really does expose lots. So don't get intimidated, or what's the
Embarrassed.
worst? Yeah. No, it does.
Embarrassed. What value are we bringing? Yeah.
Oh shucks! So you got to be kidding. This is money by time by geography. I mean, surely.
Yeah.
You know, but that word surely is hectic, right? And so please, I just want to encourage folk that when you're chasing these CDEs, particularly in an early stage, non-mature business, you know, don't think that any use case is too simple. Those are the ones that flush and keep everybody engaged, so that you can get to those more aspirational use cases. But thanks, Howard. Yeah, cool.
AG, thank you. Thank you very much. Any closing questions before we go? Okay, fantastic. Thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll share the recording as soon as possible, and we'll get it out, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much. But hopefully you'll be there for Doug Laney. He's also going to talk about data value, data juice. So I think we've learned a lot on the way. So hopefully we can contribute and discuss it with him in more detail. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, JG. Brilliant. Awesome.
Thanks.